Shock, a devastating blow to Putin from behind. Never before has the dictator been humiliated like this. Kazakhstan has finally had enough. A powerful strike from the very partner Putin once trusted has turned everything upside down. The so-called superempire has been humiliated and outmaneuvered. All of Asia is angrily turning away from Russia, India too. Putin is now left isolated. Meanwhile, Denmark and Sweden are supplying Ukraine with fiery weapons capable of finishing off the Kremlin. Moscow trembles. The balance of power shifts rapidly. Let's talk about it. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Kazakhstan secretly supplying weapons to Ukraine, right under Russia's nose? A former high-ranking Romanian official, Octavian Berceanu, made a shocking claim. He was allegedly offered 10 million euros to facilitate a green corridor scheme. According to him, Russian-made ammunition would be moved out of Kazakhstan, routed through Europe, and then directly into the hands of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Ammunition of the Russian type, which would have been supplied to a European state. This state would purchase it using funds from the Safe Fund and then resell it on the Ukrainian market.
At the same time, he said, there were discussions about setting up a weapons or ammunition factory on Romanian soil through the same structure. Essentially, Moscow is losing control of its own weapons, which are now being turned against it. The irony? The Kremlin only finds out after the fact, calmly, quietly, and decisively outmaneuvered from behind. Kazakhstan turns away from Russia. In the draft of the new constitution set to be adopted this year, the status of the Russian language has been downgraded. Russian remains official, but the phrasing on par with Kazakh has been replaced with alongside. Small detail, maybe, but the nuance is huge, especially when it comes to a constitution. On par means full equality in use, while alongside implies it may exist, but no one will notice if it doesn't.
The linguistic castling of the words 10, equal, to Qatar, alongside, in Article 9 of the Constitution, effectively deprives the Russian language of parity in stated institutions and local self-government bodies.
And this is just the beginning. Social media erupted instantly, with users demanding that any mention of the Russian language be removed from the constitution entirely. In response, government advisor Yerlan Karin emphasized that Article 9, Section 1 of the new draft constitution explicitly states that the official language of the Republic of Kazakhstan is Kazakh. What can you say? When you've spent 4 years waging a genocidal war against your neighbor, other neighbors will find ways to shield themselves, even constitutionally downgrading your language, especially when that language has become one of the tools of war. Kazakhstan has finally had enough. Russia, it seems, has completely lost its fear. The aggressor state always acts in its own interests, regardless of the harm inflicted on neighboring countries. In a shocking revelation, President Tokayev stated that the so-called empire laundered $14 billion through Kazakhstan. Speaking at a meeting on combating financial crimes, Tokayev revealed that one legal entity alone processed 7 trillion tenge, with a trail of the operation leading straight back to Russia. According to the president, this is an outrageous fact from a legal, economic and political perspective. And this is far from an isolated case. Tokayev noted that numerous similar schemes continue to occur. Kazakhstan is also being actively used by Russians to issue bank cards remotely, which remain unblocked despite Western sanctions. These payment instruments are frequently exploited for financial schemes. In fact, 90% of all money laundering crimes in Kazakhstan in 1 year involved non-residential bank cards. Friendship is fading fast. Many of Russia's allies and partners in Asia are pulling away from the Kremlin. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, China, and even Turkey are taking positions against Moscow's influence. What's driving this shift? Full details in the report.
A long-standing friendship is falling apart at the seams. According to Bloomberg, the Kremlin's longtime allies in Central Asia and the Caucasus are forging ties with China, the European Union, Turkey, and the Gulf countries, seeking to protect themselves from further aggression by Moscow. They are trying to minimize risks and are looking for ways to distance themselves from Russia as much as possible.
Asian countries are reassessing Russia's role in the modern world and their own relationships with Russia.
The lesson that Central Asian countries have drawn from the full-scale invasion is that Russia is committed to its strategic goals, no matter the cost. Kate Mallinson, partner at Prism Strategic Intelligence Limited, in London.
Another diplomatic failure has been added to Russia's list: the deterioration of relations with Kazakhstan. Even though Putin is loudly proclaiming a great friendship from every possible platform.
For Russia, Kazakhstan is also one of its largest trading partners within the Commonwealth of Independent States and the Eurasian region. Overall,
Kazakhstan has long been demonstrating a cautious yet confident distancing from Moscow. It refuses to support the war against Ukraine, does not recognize the annexation of Ukrainian territories, conducts exercises with NATO, and is developing transport corridors bypassing Russia, including through the Caspian and Turkey. And Tokayev states Kazakhstan's principled position directly to Putin's face.
We do not officially recognize Taiwan, and we also do not recognize Kosovo, nor South Ossetia, nor Abkhazia. And it has become increasingly apparent that this specific principle will also be implemented and enforced regarding the so-called sovereign state territories, which, in our professional view, specifically encompass the regions of Luhansk and Donetsk.
Against this backdrop, Russia resorted to energy blackmail. Moscow has effectively blocked the export of Kazakh oil. On July 22, 2025, Russia unexpectedly imposed restrictions on the export of Kazakh oil through Novorossiysk. This is the key route for exporting oil from Kazakhstan. The official reason cited was environmental concerns and technical issues. But in reality, this is a political signal. Astana has gone too far in its independent foreign policy. Against this backdrop, the energy blackmail looks like a desperate attempt to regain lost influence. However, the effect is likely to be the opposite. Kazakhstan will accelerate its integration with alternative economic blocs, building closer cooperation with China, Turkey, and the West.
Yes, within the framework of the Eurasian Economic Union, we do have disagreements, because we meet not only in open sessions, but sometimes also behind closed doors.
My colleague said that there are sometimes disagreements, not that we always have disagreements. In the closed sessions, we always argue.
But that's not all. Last year, Russia began demanding that owners of cars assembled in Kazakhstan and imported in 2024 to 2025 pay an additional recycling fee, a fee with increased coefficients. Kazakhstan is preparing tough retaliatory measures against the Russian automotive industry. The authorities of the republic are proposing to sharply increase the recycling fee on cars imported from Russia and Belarus by as much as 40 times. In this way, Astana has taken steps to weaken economic ties with Moscow. Additionally, this week the president of Kazakhstan, Tokayev, effectively accused Russia of fraud in financial operations. According to him, last year through the Bank of Kazakhstan, about $14 billion were transferred from a neighboring country to other countries. Tokayev noted that from the standpoint of law, economics, and even politics, this is an outrageous fact. The president of Kazakhstan did not specify which country he was referring to. The Moscow Times writes that in his speech, Tokayev was clearly hinting at the aggressor country, Russia. In addition to Kazakhstan, Russia is losing another ally, as Uzbekistan is also distancing itself from the Kremlin. The Kremlin launched a large-scale campaign against migrants, and Tashkent responded harshly. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Uzbekistan claims that there were human rights violations during the raid by Russian law enforcement agencies. It is demanding an investigation into the deaths of citizens in Moscow on June 25th. Tashkent insists on the protection of the rights of Uzbek citizens working in Russia. This is despite the tightening of Russia's migration laws. As expected, Uzbekistan is pursuing a multi-vector foreign policy, distancing itself from Russia's direct influence in the political sphere.
That is, for a long time, the perception of Russia as the successor to the Soviet Union, a major world power in one way or another influenced, for example, the Asian countries that were previously within Russia's sphere of influence. And even those countries that were not in Russia's orbit of influence still took Russia into account, as a rather significant global player.
Against the backdrop of Russia's rapid withdrawal from the post-Soviet South, other forces are taking its place. First and foremost, Turkey and China. Turkey already de facto dominates in Azerbaijan, is strengthening its influence in Armenia, and is actively working with Kazakhstan.
Probably among the Asian countries, Turkey was the first to challenge Russia. We remember the incident with the downing of the Russian plane. But overall, Turkey has been positioning itself as a player for quite some time now. A global player essentially on par with Russia. They are quite comparable to Russia, and Turkey does not behave as some kind of junior partner to Russia. But lately, we have been observing how Asian countries are no longer seeing Russia as a serious threat.
China, in turn, is deepening its economic and logistical cooperation with Kazakhstan and other Central Asian countries. Beijing is seen as a more predictable and economically beneficial partner than Moscow.
Asian countries are now reorienting themselves toward new centers of power. First and foremost, of course, China, but Turkey is also not wasting any time and is increasing its influence in the Turkic world, which actually encompasses not only Central Asia, but also a significant part of the modern world.
After the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent severing of Moscow's economic ties with the West, China became Russia's main partner. In recent years, trade between the two countries has been growing at an impressive pace. However, in 2025, this growth suddenly turned into a decline, showing that the no-limits friendship touted by Moscow and Beijing does, in fact, have its boundaries. Deutsche Welle reports that in 2025, the volume of Russian-Chinese trade decreased for the first time in the past 5 years, by as much as 7%, down to approximately $228 billion. The Russian world is being replaced by Turkish drones and Chinese investments. Western diplomatic missions and regional alliances are forming without Russia's participation. In
the case of Asian countries, things are much more complicated than, for example, with European countries. And diplomacy there is built on somewhat different principles. I think that the leaders of many Asian countries will continue to show formal respect to the Russian leadership for quite some time. But at the same time, it is clear that perceptions of Russia itself have changed dramatically. And now no one sees Russia that way anymore, as some kind of ultimate player in Eurasia who will dictate its terms to everyone in the region.
The Russian dictator has to pay with a loss of influence, allies, and reputation. Putin is losing the very geopolitical game that he himself imposed on the world.
Russia lost to India. The main backer of Russian oil has turned away from Putin. Delhi now aligns with Washington, not Moscow. How will this help Kyiv? Stay tuned.
Major state-owned and private Indian oil refineries are now actively choosing to decline the purchase of Russian crude oil in favor of a significant and strategic new trade deal with the United States. Consequently, the country's largest and most prominent refineries have completely stopped buying Russian oil and are not expected to resume these specific purchases in the foreseeable future or the long-term horizon.
The Indian oil companies and are not accepting offers from traders for loading Russian oil in March and April, said a trader who approached the refineries.
The reason for refusing Russian oil is a possible deal with the United States. The companies plan to stick to this decision going forward in order to facilitate the conclusion of a trade agreement between India and the United States. Recently, the countries announced a framework trade agreement which they plan to finalize by March. It envisions lower tariffs and deeper economic cooperation.
India is one of the targets of this ongoing global logistical and energy reshuffling. India understands that right now it is like the guest of honor at the table, that its market and its market growth are of interest to everyone. 6 months ago, I said that it would take India 2 years to free itself from dependence on Russian oil. Now 6 months have passed. We are already seeing some early signs because some positive developments have taken place.
Also on February 6th, Donald Trump signed an order canceling the additional 25% tariffs on goods from India, which had been imposed because the country was buying Russian oil. The Indian Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that the reduction in purchases of Russian oil is not related to cooperation with the United States.
Diversifying our energy sources in accordance with objective market conditions and the changing international dynamics is the foundation of our strategy to ensure energy security.
In addition to this, India has joined the fight against the shadow fleet. On Friday, the Indian Coast Guard detained 3 tankers under sanctions that were allegedly engaged in smuggling in the Arabian Sea. These tankers are transporting oil of unknown origin and concealing it.
All 3 vessels are on the U.S. Department of the Treasury sanctions list, under the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, pursuant to Executive Order EO 13902, and are believed to be linked to the network of sanctioned Indian national Jagjinder Singh Brar. According to the Treasury Department, Brar is a captain and ship owner who owns a fleet of about 30 vessels, many of which operate in the Iran-linked shadow fleet. These vessels are engaged in transferring Iranian oil from the Middle East to foreign buyers, concealing and falsifying its origin.
According to trade and industry sources, in December, the volumes of Russian oil consumption and
Sweden and Denmark are jointly funding deliveries of advanced Tridon Mk2 air defense systems to Ukraine, designed to take down Russian Shahed drones. The shipments are set to begin within the next 12 months. On top of that, Ukraine's defense minister Mikhailo Fedorov has announced the creation of a national anti-drone shield. At the same time, Russian forces on the front lines are facing a catastrophe due to the loss of Starlink access. All the details are covered in the full report.
Now that's news. Ukraine will be taking delivery of its very first sophisticated Trident Mark II surface-to-air anti-aircraft systems. which are specifically engineered and designed to destroy Shahed-type attack drones. And this will occur over the course of the upcoming 12-month period. The supply of these unique anti-aircraft systems was funded by Sweden and Denmark as part of a joint initiative to strengthen Ukraine's air defense, with a total amount of about 226 million euros. This was announced at a joint press conference by the defense ministers of both countries, Poul Jonsson and Troels Lund Poulsen. The Trident Mark II is a modern anti-aircraft system from BAE Systems. At its core is a 40mm Bofors cannon, capable of engaging aerial targets at a distance of up to 12 to 13 kilometers, with a firing rate of 200 to 300 rounds per minute. The system itself is mounted on a civilian Scania truck chassis with a 6x6 wheel configuration, which allows for rapid deployment using public roads. The use of programmable Bofors 3P munitions makes it possible to destroy drones, cruise missiles, and helicopters with high precision by creating a cloud of shrapnel directly in front of the target.
This is one of the elements of the overall air defense system that will be further developed in our country. It's not some kind of miracle weapon, of course, but it is quite effective, at least according to its tactical and technical specifications. This weapon will really help us shoot down enemy aerial targets in what is known as low-altitude airspace. In other words, we're talking about UAVs like the Shahed or Geran, as well as the Gerbera.
The media reports that it takes about 15 months to manufacture a single Trident Mark II, and some of the systems for Ukraine are already in production. These anti-aircraft systems are expected to become a relatively affordable and effective solution in the fight against Russian drones.
This is one of the elements of the air defense system that is currently being modernized in our country. Obviously, these elements today comprise both the fight directly against the drones themselves using conventional weapons, including the anti-aircraft guns we're talking about. This also includes anti-missile equipment and weaponry. Accordingly, it also involves the use of interceptor drones and mobile fire teams.
The day before, Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, announced the creation of a Ukrainian anti-drone shield.
On the President's orders, we are changing our approach to air defense. Transforming such a system doesn't happen in a matter of days, but we need to start today so that in the end we can resolve this issue. Our task is to build an anti-drone shield over Ukraine, a system that doesn't react after the fact but destroys threats while they're still in the air.
According to Fedorov, the anti-drone shield isn't about the future, it's about survival today and the possibility for Ukraine to develop even during wartime.
Accordingly, this is not the Israeli dome, and it's not Trump's future Golden Dome either. Whether that will exist is obviously a question for the Americans, not for us. Today, we really do have, first of all, a very large country, and there are a great many sites that need protection, but above all, the main thing is the safety of people. And today, the element of artificial intelligence is being actively improved, specifically in this technical work. The goal is to build, if not an air defense dome over our country, then at least to protect us as much as possible from everything that comes flying from the Russian Federation.
No other country in the world has the kind of experience in countering aerial attacks that Ukraine does. Every day and every night, our country is attacked by hundreds of enemy drones. In 2025, Russia launched up to 100,000 Shaheds and other types of UAVs against Ukraine. That is why it is necessary to build a system that works not just in isolated spots, but on a nationwide scale.
This is layered defense. It's not, well, let's put it this way so that people can technically imagine it. It's not some kind of cover over the country, right? It's really not some kind of dome as everyone imagines it, like an umbrella, right? What we're actually talking about here is layered defense. So this involves the work of small aircraft, large aircraft, military aviation, and also includes interceptor drones, which I mentioned as an element, as well as the use of classic air defense systems. Essentially, it's all about operations in the air. This is exactly what aviation does, destroying aerial targets. This is ground-to-air work.
The first step toward protecting Ukrainian skies has already been taken. The joint efforts of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense and SpaceX have blocked Starlink terminals for the Russians. The occupiers are complaining en masse about being unable to restore communications and that this will affect the enemy's ability to coordinate actions along the entire front line. And this is just the beginning. So don't get too comfortable over there in Russia. Ukrainian defense is not weakening and is ready to fight back at any moment.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video and subscribe to stay informed about the main headlines. See you soon!